This is a detailed review of the Uni-T UT61D. It is a, well, it's obviously a digital multimeter, and it has auto ranging, and it does have true RMS current voltage measurement capability. It has a 6,000 counts display resolution. The basic DC accuracy is 0.5% plus 1, which is it's pretty good. I'd say 0.5% seems like it's kind of the middle of the road for multimeters in this price range, and the fact that it's only plus 1 count, that's pretty good. It'll measure frequency to 10 megahertz. It'll measure, it could be a typo. It said 4,000 MF, millifarad, and if that's actually 4,000, that would be 4 farad, and so I think that's a typo. I think it's actually probably, they probably meant 4,000 microfarad, but we'll test it because I have some caps that are in the farad range, so, well, I guess they're ultra caps, but yeah, that'll be interesting to see. Be really impressive if it really measured up to 4 farad, but I doubt it. It'll measure resistance to 60 mega ohms. So, as far as bang for the buck, it's a pretty good meter. You can pick it up for $42 on Amazon. It's Prime, shipped to your door in 2 days. And $42, it's just a tiny bit over $40 for what all this can do. It's actually a pretty good deal. And just like the UT61E model, this one also comes with a cable to connect to your PC, you know, good old RS-232, and it comes with a CD with the software for data logging. And while it's not a USB cable, well, that's interesting. It says USB on here, but that's not the cable they give you. It's a DB connector on the other end. It's, for the money, it's just really incredible what you get. But the only problem I have is that this unit is $42, and for $48, for $6 more, you can get the E model, which just blows this one out of the water when it comes to specs. Now, the only thing this one offers over the E model would be this, a backlight. But everything else on the E model just smokes this one. So if you can get, if both of them are within your price range, and obviously, you know, they're only well, it's a shitty backlight that only lasts for 10 seconds. I hate that. But yeah, if you're interested in this model and you can spare another $6, don't get this one. Get the E model. It is so much better. This one's only 6,000 counts display resolution and 0.5% plus 1 accuracy. The E model is 22,000 counts display resolution, and it has a 0.1% accuracy plus 2, I believe. So yeah, it's really good bang for the buck. And I came to find that even though the instructions doesn't mention anything about it, the ASIC supports the peak hold function, the fancier hold that is a lot more useful than just the type that freezes whatever's on the display like this. And the fact that the E model is capable of doing that makes it even better than it already is. And but I'm going to go ahead and review this one because they're both very similar in price. They're both obviously within the $50 range, and there are some situations where you might live in a different country where maybe the D model is way cheaper than the E model, or maybe you can't even find the E model that'll ship that's in stock anywhere that'll ship to your country. So just for the sake of people in that situation, I'm going to go ahead and review this one. But obviously, if you can get the E model and it's about the same price, it's a no-brainer. Go ahead and get the E model. But that's not to say this is, if the E model didn't exist, this would still be an incredibly good multimeter, because it is. And yeah, we'll find out. So I'm not going to go as in detail with this because obviously, like I said, the E model is almost identical, except the insides are completely different. The E model has a completely different ASIC. It's got a precision resistor network. It's got a little bit more going on that gives it its better performance. But all in all, though, they're very similar, and what they come with and the packaging is very similar. So I'm going to try to shortcut some of that stuff. So if you want more detail on the accessories, the manual, and all that good stuff, just go watch a review for the E model. But they're very similar, so I'm not going to bother getting it out. But it comes with a manual. It's a really good manual, but it's in Chinese. It comes with this little adapter thing where you can test transistors and junk, but this model doesn't support that, so it's kind of useless. I didn't actually try it, but these are too far apart to go between either your resistance measurement jack or your capacitance jack to common. So I'm not exactly sure. Maybe you can measure capacitance from this jack also. I'm really not sure how that works. That's very interesting. I didn't actually read the manual on that, but it does include that. There's your connectivity cable, IR receiver on that end. Registration card for warranty, but I'm guessing unless you live in China, it's probably not useful to you. And it just comes in a normal retail box like this. And actually all the 61 models come in this box, and there's just a check mark on the top that shows you which one is inside. So, just like with the E model, the build quality on this is superb. In fact, just strictly speaking build quality, this is probably the best meter I've felt that's come out of China. No joke. And I mean by far. It is an excellent feeling multimeter as far as just, we're talking just subjective feel. You put it in your hands, the rigidity, the quality of the materials, it feels excellent. It has an integrated holster. This isn't like the bumper that a lot of them come with that's removable, you know, like a smartphone bumper. This is integrated, and you know it gets the job done, but it's more for grippiness so you don't drop it versus for durability or ruggedness. But as I always say, most people watching these reviews will probably buy it to set it on their bench, so it's really not that big of a deal how, you know, rugged it really is. And I would imagine if I dropped this down onto my carpet floor that this probably wouldn't take any damage at all, so it's really not that big of a deal. Comes with the usual Uni-T plasticky probes. They're very sharp and pointy. Finger guards mediocre. The overall feel is cheap and plasticky. Kind of a subpar strain relief on the probe ends. It's a little better on the, not by much though, a little better on the plug-in that goes into the multimeter, and it's at a non-90 degree angle, which I like because when it's sitting on your bench like this, they're not poking down into your bench surface, putting stress on the edge of the cable where it goes into the molding. So I actually like when they come out at a slightly different angle like that. Some people are weirded out by that, but knowing why they probably did that, it doesn't bug me at all, and in fact I kind of like it. But overall though, probe's probably the cheapest part of the entire Uni-T UT61 series experience. If you got this and then you upgraded to some better probes, yeah, it would feel like a premium multimeter. In fact, if you blindfolded someone and then you got some good aftermarket probes like the Probe Masters, put it on here, and then you let them feel this, play with the range switch and the kickstand and the probes, I would imagine most people would assume that this is a high-end meter. It just has that quality feel to it. And obviously, function over form, but it is still a really nice looking multimeter, but that's kind of subjective. So, the kickstand. I personally like it. It sits flush, so it looks nice, and then it's extremely easy to get out. I hate the ones that are just impossible to get out, and it's really wide, and it's just at the right spot along the back to where you can push the buttons without it falling over. And due to its width, it's completely stable. So it is definitely one of the better kickstands. I don't remember for sure, but I think it's the Amprobe would be the only one I think is pretty much on par with this one. So let's talk range switch. This has the best, or maybe second best feeling range switch out of every multimeter in the $50 shootout. And even though I think it is identical to the 61E, this specific one feels different to me, and I think it's because they packed more grease into this one on accident, maybe. But this one just has this like luxury car feel. It feels really hydraulic. You would just have to feel it. It's really hard to describe things that I'm feeling and put it into words. But as you can tell from how quiet it is, it feels really good. I can't explain it. It doesn't take a whole lot of force. I mean, it takes a good amount of force, but then it breaks and it just snaps into the next range. And they somehow do that without making this making this thing obnoxiously loud like the Klein was. Now, don't get me wrong, I love the Klein as a multimeter as a whole, but yeah, the feel of the range switch on this, to me, the best. The only one that comes close would be the BK, but I like the smoothness of this better than the BK's loud, clicky ball bearingness. But the ball bearing still feels excellent. It's still probably one of the better ones, but I think overall I like the range switch on this one. But that's another subjective thing. Nobody, I would imagine the average person probably doesn't care that much about how the range switch feels. I think it's more of a bonus. You get a multimeter for all its other features, and then if the range switch happens to be good, that's just a bonus. But Dave Jones covers it, and I'd like to be thorough like him and just go ahead and cover that for the people who do care. So let's talk measurement capabilities. It'll do volts AC and DC, and they're in separate ranges, which I like. I prefer that, and that's actually, I believe, different from the E model. The E model, I think, has volts AC and DC in one range, and then you have to push a secondary button to switch between the two. Looks like using this button, you can switch to measuring the frequency of whatever AC signal you're measuring, or duty cycle. It's got the percent sign there. Separate range for millivolts AC or DC. Looks like you use the blue button to switch between AC or DC, and it looks like if you're measuring an AC signal, you can use the Hertz button over here to measure the frequency or duty cycle. And then you have resistance, capacitance, continuity, and diode test all in one range, and then use the secondary button to switch between them all. Dedicated frequency measurement section on the selector switch, but if it's anything like all the other Chinese meters that I've seen, that's meant to be logic level stuff, so you probably don't want to plug your mains into that. You would want to plug your mains into this range and then push this button to measure it. And I believe people have actually blown their multimeters up doing that on accident, and I think if I remember, I think it was from reading the manual for the E model, but I imagine it's almost identical verbiage. I think it says if you're measuring anything above logic level, make sure you do it in here, not here. But yeah, it's to me annoying when they have both, because it can be confusing and it makes it really easy to potentially blow your multimeter up. But if you're paying attention, you know what you're doing. It's not that big of a deal, but it's worth noting for anyone considering this multimeter. And then last but not least, we have current measurement ranges. It's AC and DC shared. You use the blue button to switch between AC and DC. It looks like everything defaults to DC, and then the blue button switches to AC. Then we have the hold button, which is the crappy freeze the display type, as you can see, which basically is useless. If you hold this, it turns the backlight on. This is a manual ranging button. You have min-max, which, let's see how it operates. Is it the good type or the crappy type? Yeah, it's the crappy type. So you can either see the max or the min, and that's it. If you want to go back to seeing a live reading, it clears out of min-max mode and you lose your maximum and your minimum, and to me that's basically pointless, so they just wasted this button. It's got relative function, which is very handy to have. You definitely want that because almost any multimeter in this price range offers that nowadays, so there's no reason not to get it. And then you got your frequency duty cycle button and then your secondary select button, and that's all she wrote. Let's talk about the display. I don't know why, but Uni-T they get really good displays in these things, and it is, sorry, there's like junk all over it. Sorry, it looks like I was generating static that was causing this thing to go out of range for the millivolts. But yeah, the displays on the Uni-Ts are always really, really good, and this is no exception. As you can see, the contrast is excellent. The size of the digits are just perfect. It's got a good bar graph, everything. I don't know, everything is just great on this display. I really don't have any complaints. And then the backlight's good, but the fact that it only lasts for 10 seconds pisses me off. But it's a nice light blue, and it's really even. There's no hot spots. But when it turns off after 10 seconds, what's the point? Because if you're turning it on, you're probably in a dark situation, so 10 seconds and then it turns back off, it's going to be really annoying. And then having to hold it to turn it back on also is annoying. If it's going to be a short one, at least give it a dedicated button. But I'd prefer one that just stayed on and then the user can choose when they want it to turn off. Okay, let's take a look at the battery and fuse situation. And if I remember correctly, it's just one screw. Unfortunately, I believe it's a self-tapper. And then I think the kickstand comes off with it. Yep. So yeah, crappy self-tapper. And the battery, oh yeah, this one had the Uni-T branded battery. It's probably one of those stupid, yeah, it's a heavy duty, so it's crap. Oh, sorry, extra heavy duty. Just goes into the little battery compartment thing here that aligns it for the beautiful battery tabs. I love battery tabs. Way better than stupid soft snaps. And it looks like the sizes here are different, so it's basically gives you polarization. Now this one, the piece of foam in the bottom, it doesn't have the fluff left in it to hold this still, so this one rattles around. That's a little, it's a little disheartening, but whatever. I think once it's against the battery tabs, it holds it down against the foam, and then it won't move around, because I didn't hear any rattling when I picked it up. But at this point, we might as well go ahead and just take it the rest of the way down. The thing I like about the Uni-T is, despite being one of the most rigid feeling meters out of the $50 bunch, it only takes 2 screws to take it apart. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that now. Okay, all it took was just 2 self-tappers at the bottom, and then I think the front just hinges. Yeah, and then it comes right apart. So, top has shielding, and you know, at least they went through the trouble of shielding. When they do stuff like that they didn't have to do, it shows you that, you know, they're putting some effort into it. Doesn't mean everything, but it's better than nothing, right? So, yeah, it's a lot different from the E model. It's still got 2 ceramic fuses, but I think, just like on the E model, I think they're only 250 volt rated. Yeah, it says 250 volt max. Which to me is crap. I think if your multimeter can measure up to 1000 volts, then they should assume that the user might forget that they're still over in the current jack, especially because this multimeter doesn't have jack detection. So what's to say that the user accidentally has their jack over here in the 10 amp slot instead of moving it back over to here, and then they put it in voltage, and or hell, maybe it's still over in current mode, and then you go over there and plug it into your 1000 volts. Yeah, bad things are gonna happen. So obviously though, if it were through voltage, it wouldn't be going through these, so it wouldn't be as big of a deal. But yeah, it still sucks. Actually, no, it wouldn't matter what range it's in, because that would still go through the shunt. So yeah, either way, if the device is capable of measuring 1000 volts or 600 volts, I think all the components should handle that voltage as well, for whenever you forget which jack you're in, especially on a meter that doesn't alert you as to saying, hey dummy, you didn't switch your jack. Spring for the shielding on the back of the case. Very nice rugged battery tabs. The shielding for the LCD folds around here, which is a little interesting. For PC comms, it's send only, so it doesn't have a receive, IR receive over here. I got your speaker, an interesting little isolation slot. And yeah, this is completely different from the E model. As far as input protection, other than the 2 kind of weaker fuses with extremely weak voltage ratings, there's a really, well, current shunt's not a part of the input protection, but there's the current shunt. It looks pretty nice. There's a little bit of isolation going on here, but that's really about it. There's a really weak looking PTC, and there's a input power resistor, but at least on this side of the board, that's it. So I think we're gonna need to take a peek on the other side. I was gonna say go watch the other video for the E model, but I gotta remember that the actual PCB is completely different between the 2 models. So looks like the brains behind this unit, it's hiding on the other side. So I'm gonna go ahead and pull the board out. And if I remember correctly, those 2 screws go into the LCD assembly. So really it should just be this bottom one, and then the 2 tabs built into the chassis on the side that hold it in. So I'm gonna go ahead and pull that out, and we'll take a peek. Okay, so I got the board out, and there's really nothing exciting on this side of the case, but before I put it back together, I am gonna clean that crap out, because that bugs the crap out of me when there's dust on the back side of the display. Yeah, there's nothing on here. It's all hiding behind here. So I'm gonna have to pull those 2 screws out so we can look behind there at the main ASIC or processing unit. Yeah, it's the crappy split type jacks, but I mean, they get the job done. About half the multimeters out there do it this way, so I mean, it's not like it doesn't work. It's just they can wear out after a while and lose their tension. But if you have a good tight tolerance plastic molding that goes around those, you shouldn't have that problem, technically speaking. But yeah, no other input protection on the front side, so that one MOV is all this thing has. So obviously the E model is much better. But yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and pull this off so we can see what's hiding underneath it. Okay, so what we have is the LCD, the backlight module, which, curious where the, oh, it's got the, yeah, does this look familiar? It's exactly how the AM probe was, which shows you that they're definitely the OEM for the AM530 AM probe. But yeah, actually it's even got the center hole there where the AM probe had the molding that came up with the metal nut for the battery door in it. So looks like this one has it. They just didn't mold in the nut, which makes them a bunch of cheap asses. They couldn't spend 2 cents to put a threaded metal insert there. But yeah, that's really all there is to this. There's the spot they fold over with the conductive side, so that contacts a spring on the, well, I think there's another one on the back. Yeah, right here. And you got your zebra strip to send your data through to the LCD. And really, that's it. And here's the money shot. And should be very familiar to everybody by now. Seems like everything's got that sucker in it. So let's see if I can get a good clean shot. And as always, if that's not good enough, just shoot me a message and I'd be happy to try to get specific pictures or whatever of anything anyone requests. But these days with good HD 1080p video, I think that's probably sufficient for most things. But yeah, if you really want me to break out the DSLR and macro lens and you want something really close up, I can do that, but I don't imagine anyone would be that interested in these PCBs. But yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and put this back together and we'll do some measurements with it. Alright, I got it back together, and luckily due to its awesome design, it doesn't really take a lot to put it together or take it apart. But let me scoot the camera a little bit. Okay, so I guess we'll first start off with voltage measurement. Now, due to the fact that this is 6,000 counts instead of 4,000 counts, this one will actually have 3 digits to the right of the decimal point when we measure 5 volts. It overshoots a hair, it looks like, but me personally, it doesn't bother me. I always give stuff time to settle before I trust a reading, but that could bug some people, so just something to note. It wasn't obviously as dead on as the E model, but it's well within spec. Okay, we'll do continuity test, and these are notorious for having crappy stock probes that make the continuity test seem not as great as it really is, but yeah. But with a good set of aftermarket probes, it becomes a lot better. But this still is not as good as the one on the E model, which is, again, the E model beats this in almost every way except the fact that it doesn't have a backlight on the E model. But in every other way, the E model smokes this model. So yeah, only get this one if that's your only choice. But continuity test, not the fastest, but definitely not the slowest. I would say it's about average. So let's go back to resistance and see how quick the auto ranging is for resistance. Extremely slow. So yeah, on the E model you touch them together and I mean it's just a split second and it's already it's already in the right range. This one takes quite a while. So yeah, auto ranging for resistance range at least, not great. So let's check out the display update rate. It's actually not bad. It's either similar or maybe just a hair quicker than it was in the E model, at least for resistance range. So that's pretty decent. That's what, 2 to 3 seconds. So yeah, not bad. Let's go ahead and do measure some precision resistors. Here's a 1K. Here's a 10K. It's really bizarre how a lot of these take a little while to settle. It makes me think that they have some kind of rolling average going on to help filter out noise using software. It would be the only thing I can think of that would explain why measuring resistance would cause it to creep up like that. But obviously everything it's fairly accurate. It's well within its spec. Okay, let's measure current. The 1 milliamp precision. Sorry. Alright, it's time to measure current. I have a precision 1 milliamp source. Look at that. Pretty much right on the money. So, very good. Okay, let's start off by measuring a higher power LED. And you know, most multimeters that include diode check is for, it's for checking silicone diodes. So it's not really meant for checking LEDs because they usually have a much higher voltage drop, but that's not to say that some of these aren't able to, because they are. A lot of them have a high enough voltage and current to light one up, at least just to see if it works, or to even be able to tell what the forward voltage is. But look at that. This one is able to light it up. I don't know if you can tell. So yeah, it doesn't read a voltage on the screen though, but we'll test a red one, and I bet the red LED will. Yep. And the only reason I knew is because that's pretty much how most of these behave. If it'll light the white one up and doesn't show voltage, usually the red one will. And the only thing left, I guess, let's measure capacitance. So it says 4 farad. It says 4,000 millifarad, but I think they meant microfarad, and they put an M instead of the U, or micro symbol. First, we'll start off the low range. I always try to see, none of these are able to, as far as I know, but it's always worth checking to see if they'll measure down to the picofarad range. Nope. This one, though, is 100 nano, and pretty much everyone is able to go this low. Yep. Okay, I'm going to short this, make sure there's nothing residual left in it. It's 1,000 microfarad electrolytic. Of course, the screen freezes. I hate the ones that do that. I wish they would tell me something. Yep, it's very slow, but it's able to do it. Okay, I just shorted this on a screwdriver. It's a 4700. So what I think they did, I think they meant to put it's 4,000 microfarad, but put an M instead of the U. So 4,000 millifarad would obviously be 4 farad, and that to me doesn't sound right. So we'll try this one. This will tell us. This is 4700. Whoops. Butterfingers today. Come on, focus. So this one's 4,700 microfarad, so if it is indeed the 4,000 that I think the range for this really is, then I'm assuming it'll say overload. But we will find out. It just might take a while. Yep, so I think that was a typo. I think they meant to put 4,000 microfarad, but as you saw, it did the 1,000 microfarad one just fine, and I have no reason to believe that it wouldn't also do a 4,000 or something just below that. So yeah, capacitance measurement is decent. It's a little slow, but it seemed to be pretty accurate, and 4,000 is a pretty decent range. 1,000 is still okay, but it, it could be a little higher, but 4,000 will cover quite a few more caps than ones that'll only go to like 1,000. So, all right, I think the only thing left as far as measurements go is to measure frequency. The instructions say that it'll measure frequency all the way up to 10 megahertz. So as I always do, I'm just gonna go straight for 10 and see what it does. Okay, so this one says it'll do 10 megahertz, and I have my frequency generator set to 10 megahertz. Here we go. Yep, almost right on the dot too. Cool. And actually, it's interesting to know that it's actually got 3 digits to the right of the decimal point. That's awesome. Just for fun, let's try 20. Yeah, it'll do 20. Let's try 30. Yeah, let's try 40. Nope, so it looks like it'll get up to 30 something, but yeah, not bad. Alright, so I have it hooked up to my bench power supply, and I have it set to 9 volts. And I'm just going to turn down the voltage 100 millivolts at a time, and we will see if and when the low battery light comes on, we'll see if the voltage measurement changes at all or fluctuates. And we'll see if it shuts itself off at any point. So here we go. It's 8 volts even. So it looks like 7.4 volts, there's no indicator, and then at 7.3 the low battery light comes on. So there's 6.9. 6 volts even, 5 volts even, 4 volts even. It's still holding a good precise measurement, so it's good. It's 3 volts even, and it weirded out. Okay, I'm back up to 3.5. Now I'm going to go down slowly, so 3.5 is fine. Actually, let's make sure. To me, to consider it a good cutoff voltage, it has to be able to turn itself back on, and so it was. Let's try 3.4, 3.3, 3.2, so 3.2, something happens. Okay, so 3.3 volts, it's able to turn itself back on, and then at 3.2, it just shuts itself off and goes berserk. But at no point did the reading ever fluctuate at all. Now what I should have done is probably had this hooked up to my 5 volt reference, because then we'd have an extra digit to see if there's any movement at all. But it's not too big of a deal. To me, this behaves properly. So I think now I'm going to set it back to 9 volts, and then we'll power it through another multimeter so we can measure the current draw. Alright, so I have the Uni-T UT61D powered. Sorry, I have it laying against a spool of solder as a means of a kickstand, because to have the battery door off, the kickstand's connected to the battery door. But anyway, it's being powered through the Voltcraft in current measurement mode, and it looks like it's drawing about 2.1 milliamps. And 2.1 milliamps is not that bad. That's pretty good. Some of them draw 4 or 5 milliamps. So, and with its pretty low cutoff voltage, I imagine this will get pretty decent battery life. Downside though is that this does not have, whoops. Downside is that this doesn't have auto power off, because the PC connectivity is always enabled on this by default, and due to the way the ASIC in this works, when PC connectivity is enabled, it disables auto power off. So as far as I know, there's no way around that without doing some actual modding, so keep that in mind. But 9 volt batteries are cheap, and all you gotta do is remember to turn it off, and it's not that big of a deal. I'm gonna go pull up some 9 volt battery data sheets and then do some really rough math and give you a ballpark figure of what the battery life should be on this unit. Alright, I did some rough ballpark math, and it should get about 300 hours. It could potentially get a little bit more, but you know, it's not guesstimating what a battery will do is not an exacting science, because the current draw affects the actual capacity you'll end up getting out of a battery, thanks to Puchert's law, or Puchert's constant. So yeah, I got as close as I could, I find, on the datasheet. they'll have examples of how long different devices will go, and the nearest one in this data sheet was 1 milliamp, so I kind of took a little bit of capacity off of there because this is drawing double that, but it should be pretty close. And yeah, about 300, a little over 300 hours. And if you get, obviously if you get a one of the advanced lithium batteries, you could probably get closer to 350, maybe 400 hours on it. No auto power off, but I think 300 to 400 hours for the average EE hobbyist would probably get you through a year easily. I'm actually curious how long it would go, but for me it would probably go even longer than that. But yeah, I think I'm going to go ahead and put all this stuff up and we'll do a conclusion. Alright, so the Uni-T UT61D, what do I think of it? Honestly, I think it's a great meter. It's really, really good bang for the buck. Out of the Chinese ones, it's definitely the best feeling. And it's tough, though, to recommend this over the Amprobe or the Klein or some of the others. Well, maybe over the Klein, because this does have 6,000 counts, and I think the Klein's only 4,000 counts. But it does have some advantages over some of the other ones, like build quality and feel. And yeah, but the thing is, a lot of the other ones around the same price, around right around $50. They'll have realm and max, hold, backlight, 6,000 counts. So this one doesn't have a huge leg up as far as functionality and bang for the buck. But if you got this one, I wouldn't fault you for it. It is a really good meter. It's just, the reason why I wouldn't personally recommend this one is that you can get the E model, and it is just worlds better than this one. And so if you haven't seen the review for that, I will have uploaded that one just before I would have uploaded this this review. So go check that one out, and you'll just see, it's just as far as measurements and accuracy and all its functionality, and even the fact that it has a peak hold functionality, which usually only the expensive multimeters have. It's a really, really good bang for the buck meter, and that's why I kind of called it the unofficial overall winner of my $50 shootout. But it's really hard to pick just one, because it really depends on what you're doing with it. If you said you're going to go probing high energy stuff, I'd tell you don't touch the Uni-Ts, don't touch any of the Chinese ones. Actually, just grab the Fluke or maybe the Amprobe. Funny thing though, the Amprobe is actually made by Uni-T, so yeah, what does that tell you? Yeah, there's really not a lot to say. It feels great. It's input protection on this one is a little light compared to the E model, but for most people, it's going to be a bench queen. It's just going to be sitting in your climate controlled workbench in your lab. Not a big deal. Guess we'll find out how durable it is, because I'm getting close to the end of the stack of all the multimeters I need to do individual reviews on, and as soon as I'm done, be drop test time and mains on ohms time, and then after that, any of those survivors will be sent to Joe Q. Smith, and he will torture them even more. So I'm really curious to see how these fare. But hope you found the review helpful, and if not, well, sorry. But I will see you in the next video. Bye.